Welcome to Empowered with Elizabeth Namofsky. What do you think of when you hear the name Valerie Gibson? I think of pioneer activist, celebrity speaker on joyful aging, relationships, and sexuality, an incredible writer, author, and media personality. But did you know that Valerie Gibson is also the one who started the cougar movement and coined the phrase cougar? You know, older women dating younger men. Settle in, ladies. We have a pretty exciting conversation coming up with my interesting friend, Valerie Gibson. Val, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Not at all, my pleasure.
So a lot of people don't know this about you, that you are quite the activist. When did you first become aware of your drive for social awareness and activism?
It's a hard question, actually, Liz, because I think all of my life, even as a child, I had this instinct to know that something was not right for women somehow. I lived through an era, remember, where women were second-class citizens. We were not allowed to do this, that, not allowed to be doctor, surgeon. We couldn't be anything except probably nurse, secretary, or wife. And that was about it. And we were really held down very strongly. So, and I never quite adjusted that, even as a young person. I never quite understood that. But as a child, I really was entirely different because I lived was born at the beginning of the war, and also lived in Germany immediately the war ended. My father was famous during that time, and we were over there because of his fame and abilities during the war. And a childhood that was amassed with pain and hurt by people damaged, buildings damaged. The world was damaged. And I think the interesting part of that was I became aware that the world around me, particularly when I was in England, was all women. And I think the fact, of course, was obvious. The men were all at war, everybody. There was no men at home hardly. So who had to do everything and take up everything? Um, do the factory work, build tanks, and I think what happened was women suddenly discovered, because they'd been held back so long, so hard for so long, that, hey, they could do these things, not only do them, but do them as well as men. And I think that was a big moment in women's history, if you like, women's empowerment, particularly, that they could do this. They could actually run a country, even not allowed to be politicians or anything like that, but they could do everything the men were doing and had to. It wasn't a question they were told they couldn't. They had to. The men were not.
So you lived and survived as a small child in England during World War II and after in Germany, which must have been quite traumatic. But you also say that the war altered women's lives, perhaps for the first time and forever, as regards to their place in life and their empowerment. Now, you said your father was really famous. What was the change and why?
You mean for the women or for myself?
For yourself and the women.
Well, remember, I was terribly young, and I was a small child. But I had a childhood that you wouldn't have liked, or anybody. I mean, I just feel really strongly for the children in Ukraine, for instance. War is horrific. Or you live in things, bad things, hearing things you shouldn't hear as a child or see, really. It was a very, very harsh time. Um, but of course, we were in Germany and the place was demolished. And that was really hard to see. And I listened to stories from the people who worked for us that you wouldn't believe. Like, only people who've been through war could believe that such cruelty and terror existed. And of course, it does. And I learned I didn't live in a world that was full of brightness and happiness and toys and good food or anything. It wasn't like that at all. War, there was no food, hardly, for anybody in England. They're just, women managed. And I think my admiration for women was absolutely born during those times, no matter how small I was. It was born that women were amazing.
Well,
And
and that was amazing too, because that was through your informative years as well. So when we come back, we've got to go to commercial break, but when we come back, we'll continue on with your story, Val. Don't go away. We'll be right back.